Hi again then guys, and welcome to another special projects custom build, and this particular build was initially going to be a replica today of the Challenger SRT Demon. I was planning to do a replica of that car. It was requested a few times, understandably. We did of course do the Hellcat before, and I hope to do it. Checked out the specs online. I couldn't find the weight of the car and couldn't find the gearbox ratios, but even then I did still plan to do at least some variation of that build, but you can't even get enough power out of the Challenger on the game to actually replicate the real power of the car. So overall, it's just not really going to be accurate in any way. So instead of that, we're still doing a Challenger build, as of course you'll have seen from the title and the thumbnail, but instead of a Demon, which is what I wanted to do, we're doing a slightly different, more oddball build. We've done NASCAR style builds before, mainly for classic muscle cars. This one though is a more modern take. It's based of course on the Challenger touring car, which doesn't look too far off a NASCAR style vehicle anyway. It has that kind of simplified, just gives you what you need kind of look to it, and we ran with that, basically. Now, as far as the colour, you can go for whatever you want, of course, just like with the race number and the rims. As far as the rims, I swapped them out to Rays VRG2s, and I've left those in the black that they come with. And as far as the body colour, I've gone for Hemi Orange, which is fairly obvious where you can find that car, and so that's it for the visuals. Obviously, being a race car, you can't do much else to it visually, or you can't do anything else to it visually, so we'll cover the mechanical side of things next, as we always do, and of course take it out on an oval track, Daytona in particular, to see what kind of performance it can offer as at least some level of NASCAR. Now, as far as the tuning side of things, you can adjust it, of course, and build it as necessary to your personal preference. Change the power, the weight, all that kind of stuff. I've rounded it off to the 600 pp level. You could quite easily go lower, of course. I've gone for racing hards, which is just the tyres that the car comes with. Of course, you could upgrade those, but those tend to be the racing tyres that most people use. As far as suspension, I've lowered the ride height just a little bit to 80, front and rear. Springs have increased to 20 and 15. The compression aspect of the dampers I've increased to 5. And then the extension we've got on 4. Anti-roll I've lowered to 1 with neutral camber and neutral toe. Some people might want to have some camber in particular on an oval track. That's fair enough. Go for whatever you need. As far as the gearbox, well, we'll come back to that in just a second. As far as the diff, I've opted for the lowest initial torque, highest acceleration and lowest braking, which is a fairly common setup that I use with some of my race cars, or many of them, as I said, a common use. If you want to change it up, that's fine. Obviously, some people already know what works better for them. By all means, go for that if you already know what works best for you. As far as power, we do of course have an oil change as we usually do, and I've upgraded, as you can see, the supercharger and the engine tuning. We are running full power, which is still not as high as a NASCAR in oil change form in particular, but as far as the weight, we have increased the ballast. So you're not running as much power or as much weight as an actual spec NASCAR that's on the game. So it's not going to be exactly against them in terms of competitive range, but you could, I guess, if you wanted to. I'm not giving any promises that it can beat them though. It's more of a novelty vehicle. But I've added 198 kilos of ballast, so not quite the full ballast, but close to it. And we've put that all the way to the back. That gives you a pretty nice 49-51 split. That helps the front end to be a little bit more loose. And I've actually opted for the lowest downforce. On a NASCAR, I would usually go for higher downforce, but seeing as this car is a little bit slower and the handling is pretty easy to control anyway, I've opted to go lower to improve that acceleration and top-end performance. And finally, for the gearbox, of course, you can change it if you feel necessary, but I've gone for the highest auto setting, and I wanted it at least to some degree to be kind of a 4-speed gearbox, again, in a similar way to the NASCARs that most people use on the game. So then for the individual gears, I've gone for 3.4, 2150, 1525, 1150, and then for 5th and 6th, it doesn't matter as much, especially for 6th. I've got 5th as kind of a draft gear, 0.925, and then 6th 0.775. But of course, feel free to change any of that if you want to. This does run 4 speeds. It cruises up to just under 200 around Daytona. Obviously it does more with draft, and you're very, very close to the red line at that speed, so you will need to use 5th as a draft gear, potentially 6th as well, but I haven't raced it in that way. And as far as the final drive, I've gone for 2.6, but of course you could change that if you want to, along with any of the other settings, because NASCAR is very much a personalizable sport. People's driving style and the way they like the car to be set up can vary quite a bit. That's just my personal preference, so of course change it for you. But that's it overall for the tune. Now let's actually test it on the Daytona track. So as I mentioned just now, I haven't actually compared this car in an oval race to the legit NASCARs in the game. I don't think it could really beat any of them. It's quick, but it's not that quick. But if you do want to race it against, say, some of the other touring cars, like the Camaro touring car is probably its primary rival, and a couple of my other older NASCAR builds maybe as well, then it can definitely compete at that level. Like I said, it's more of just an oddball, build it for the fun of it kind of tune, rather than a necessity build that you can use all the time for winning races, that kind of thing. But either way, if you decide to race it or just have it for fun, I hope, of course, you find it fun and potentially competitive as well if you do race it. But that's it overall for this particular build. I'll see you guys next time, and as always, thanks for watching.